Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Have you ever thought to yourself, what is the greatest song of all time? It's something that's often crossed my mind, and I've always thought to myself, it must be something like Michael Jackson or something like that. But in actual fact, it's probably not what you actually think it is. So I started looking into this because a friend of mine, he asked a question. I'm not going to tell you what the question is until at the end, but it got me thinking as to what is the greatest song of all time, and I was really surprised as to what it was, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. So the thing with music is that it affects all of us in different ways. I mean, we all listen to music, but what we listen to really varies. I mean, I've got a son and a daughter, and they both listen to completely different types of music, and they're only 2 years apart. And if you think about what we listen to today compared to what was listened to perhaps 10 years or 20 or 50 or 100 years ago, it's very, very different. So, what is popular today isn't necessarily going to be popular in 10 years from today. Yeah, makes sense? So, it got me thinking as to what is the greatest song of all time, because that's quite a different thing to what's in the top 10 right now. The thing with music is that over time there's been some real standout songs which have, really eclipsed everything else that's out at that particular point in time, and certainly for decades to come. So if you're looking at it purely in terms of the most sold song of all time, then hands down that goes down to White Christmas by Bing Crosby. So that was released in 1942, and about 60 million copies have been sold, which is pretty impressive. But a lot of you might think, well, Whitney Houston's probably not far behind that, and you'd be surprised that she's actually at number 6 with I Will Always Love You, which has only sold 20 million copies. But this is actually where it starts getting a little bit complicated, because there's different ways in which you can calculate it, and the Billboard Top 100 calculated it in a slightly different way. Well, you guys have obviously all heard of Ed Sheeran. Now, Shape of You, according to Billboard, comes in at number 9. And then the number 1 slot goes to Chubby Checker and Twist, would you believe? I mean, I couldn't believe it myself, but it's true. But this covers released songs which were released into the charts. And what if you also include unreleased songs? Because in 1912, there was a song that was written called Good Morning to All. That song has now become Happy Birthday to You, and that for a while was thought to be the most played song of all time. But then there's another song which I'd never even heard of. It's called It's a Small World, and that particular song has since sort of laid claim to being the most played song. Now, I'd never even heard of it, but it's a Disney song, and it's the reason why it's the most played song, or potentially the most played song, is because it's played at all the Disney theme parks around the world. So it's just constantly on loop, and therefore it also tries to claim the title of the most played song. So in 1971, another song was released, which was by a band called Led Zeppelin. The song is called Stairway to Heaven, and although that was not the most sold song, it's probably the most covered song of all time. So with all the different covers that there are of that particular song, all the different renditions, that could possibly be the most played song as well, but it's not. As could Queen and Bohemian Rhapsody, but again, that too did not make the top of the list. But things have changed a little bit in that now we are more in this digital age, and it's much easier to track the amount of listens and views that we have of music itself. So when we look at that, Ed Sheeran comes out really well. His song Shape of You has had 6.7 billion views on YouTube. So surely that takes this top spot. But it doesn't, because there's another song by Louis Fonsi called Despacito, and that has had 6.7 billion views, 2 million more than Ed Sheeran's. So at 6.7 billion views, that's a lot of views, right? I mean, is there any song that could possibly top that? There is. And actually, the one that tops it by a huge margin, way bigger than the 6.7 billion. And I'll tell you what that is now. The song itself is called the Adhan, and it's a prayer. It's a call to prayer that is sung by Muslims to signify the start of the prayer time. Now, just to give you a bit of background to this song, Islam, it's been around for about 1,400 years, and it was started by the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Now, at the time when the prayers started, there was a lot of debate about how to call people to the prayer itself, and people were talking about using bells or whistles and things of that nature. And there was a freed black slave by the name of Bilal. He had a dream. In that dream, Bilal saw himself calling people to prayer using his voice alone. And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, okay, fine, go ahead, climb on top of that building over there and do the call to prayer. And that's exactly what he did. Now, that call to prayer has not changed in 1,400 years. So it's the same prayer that has been sung since then. But how can it top 6.7 billion renditions or views, or however you want to call it? I mean, is it possible that it exceeds that? Now, a little bit of background to this, first of all, is that the call to prayer is done 5 times a day. So there's 5 prayers, and so it's done before each of those prayers. And it's done in every mosque. Now, just to keep things simple, I am really being conservative with the numbers here. At the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, we know that there was 10,000 Muslims, and today globally there's well over 2 billion. But let's just call it 2 billion just to keep things simple. So we know that in year 1 there were about 10,000 Muslims, and if you sort of calculate that 1,000 Muslims per mosque, it means there would be about 10 mosques at the time when the Prophet passed away. And if we calculate the number of adhans that they do, so that's 5 adhans per day per mosque, that would give us 18,000 adhans in the first year. Now, taking it linear, as I said, starting with 10,000 and taking it to 2 billion as it is now, that would mean an average increase of 1.5 million Muslims per year. With me so far? Good. Year 2 would mean that we have 1.5 million plus the 10,000 that we had originally. Now, that gives us a total of around 2.6 million adhans in year 2 alone, coupled with the amount that we had in the first year. So we actually pass the 1 billion mark in the 29th year of Islam. By the year 702 AD, we're up to over 100 million Muslims and an additional 184 million adhans in that year alone. But let's not forget all the already 6.3 billion adhans we've had from all the previous years. And all of those combined means we have passed Louis Fonsi and Despacito. The numbers keep increasing. 1.5 million new Muslims a year, around 1,400 new mosques, each giving an additional 2.6 million adhans added to all the existing mosques and all the previous adhans. So where does it leave us today, 1,400 years after the adhan was first performed? As I mentioned, we know that today there's over 2 billion Muslims around the world and around 2 million mosques. This is likely to be more, but I'm being really conservative, as I've mentioned already. All the mosques combined today perform around about 3.6 billion adhans per year. Now, that is in addition to all of the previous mosques and all of the adhans that have been performed over the last 1,400 years. So where does that leave us in terms of a total number? Well, this is it. Yep, it's huge. If you can't read it, I'll read it for you. 2,325,125,349,250. Absolutely mind-boggling, and I never expected it to be as large as that before I actually started the calculations. But this adhan, it's in Arabic, and what does it actually mean? God is the greatest. I bear witness that there is no God except the one God. I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God. Hasten to the prayer, hasten to the success. God is the greatest. There is no God except the one God. As you can see, God has ensured that the number 1 song of all time, by far, praises God. If you want to hear the adhan and to hear why it's so special, I made this time-lapse video in Mecca, and it has the adhan playing in the background, sung by a British pop icon and convert called Cat Stevens. And remember the beginning, I mentioned that my friend, he asked me a question. Well, that question he asked me was, do you think they will ever change the adhan to something more modern? Well, my answer to him is, it's the #1 song of all time with over 2.5 trillion performances and increasing by more than 3.6 billion each year, more than any other song in history. It's soothing to the heart, it's humbling, even to non-Muslims who cannot understand Arabic. So, my question to him is, what would you change it to make it more successful? This is just one of the many, many miracles from the Quran and from Islam. And in this series, in this playlist, we cover many different types of miracles. I'd love to share them all with you, so please check them out. And if you like what we do, subscribe to our channel. If you're watching this on WhatsApp, all you need to do is click the link. It'll open it up in YouTube, and then you can subscribe in YouTube from there. Thanks very, very much for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we look forward to sharing more great miracles from the Quran in the future.